What Jenny Agutter just revealed about Logan's run isn't just shocking, but something fans could never figure out for decades.
Life has been designed to make every day a carefree holiday.
Behind the floating bodies, 30-year age limit, and glossy sets were a few bizarre stories. Here are 19 shocking facts revealed by Jenny Agutter and company decades later. And as a bonus, you wouldn't believe what Jenny said about the green dress and underwear problem. So, sit back and let's rewind time. Number 1. The main premise of Logan's run focuses on youth and ensuring that everyone living in this utopia is under the age of 30.
But in the 23rd century, life lasts 30 years. Not one day less, not one day more.
Yet, Michael York, who ironically played the role of Logan, had already broken the rule even before it became reality. While he was being cast for the role, he was 33 years old. But even more surprising is the fact that he wasn't alone. Co-star Richard Jordan was 38. And even more ironic was that Jenny Agutter, who played Logan's love interest, was already over the age of 23. This made no sense given the story of the film, but according to Michael York, it was done on purpose. In fact, they tried to point out Hollywood's obsession with youth and how many stars were pushed out once they reached a certain age. Even more was that the team didn't make any secrets of it either, and it became one of the longest-running quirks of the film. But you won't believe how they came up with the idea. Number 2. Back in the 1970s, especially before the release of Star Wars in 1977, no one truly believed in the success of science fiction films. Even MGM Studios didn't believe that it would be a big hit, until they saw the box office success of Westworld and Soylent Green in 1973. These iconic films proved that audiences were hungry for some futuristic tales with this kind of dark undertone. Without those predecessors, we might never have seen this vision of a domed utopia turned nightmare. What's weird is how interconnected these sci-fi classics are, almost like a hidden cinematic family tree. But getting Michael York to star in the film was one of the biggest challenges. Number 3. Now, Michael York is iconic for his role as Logan 5, but when he first read the script, the actor wasn't exactly thrilled by it. Since he hadn't yet starred in a sci-fi film, he considered it a risky venture into a genre that didn't align with his classical acting background. Having just starred in films like Cabaret, he believed that prancing around in futuristic outfits wouldn't appeal to any viewers. Then he was finally convinced, and much like his other roles, he dove in head first. His performance didn't only anchor the movie's blend of action and philosophy, but added a layer of unscripted irony that catapulted him to superstar status. This might not have been the movie everyone craved, but it was definitely the one everyone needed to understand the frustration of actors who reached the age of 30 in Hollywood. Number 4. Even though Farrah Fawcett is barely in the film, her brief appearance became one of the most iconic parts of the film.
Hello, Sandman. We don't get many Sandmen. Doc, there's a Sandman here. Can you see him?
Her casting as Holly 13 wasn't just a serendipitous discovery, but a breath of fresh air. Back in the 1970s, Fawcett wasn't yet a household name, and had it not been for Michael York, she probably wouldn't have gotten the role at all. According to the story, York spotted what he called a blonde vision of delight while playing tennis. He then proposed her to the casting director, and within moments, she actually landed the role. This would be her introduction to bigger audiences, which later helped the star explode in films such as Charlie's Angels. It was kind of weird to think that a casual game of tennis indirectly launched her into Hollywood stardom, but given her looks, she would have probably made it to the silver screen in any case. Let us know what you think about Fawcett in the comments below. Number 5. Once you see the glowing lights and sleek interiors of the domed city, you'd be forgiven for thinking that it was filmed on an expensive science fiction set, like many other Hollywood movies of the time. The only problem with this is that the low budget would have made it impossible for the director to create such a set. So, they turned to an actual shopping mall, more specifically, the Dallas Market Center and Dallas Apparel Mart in Texas. Since these locations were new, they already had a futuristic resemblance, with glass elevators, wide open spaces, and unique design that stood out from anything else. But this didn't mean the crew did nothing. To give it a more sci-fi feel, they added more colored lights, mirrors, and fog machines. But there was one more problem. The mall was still operational. Yes, unfortunately, the mall couldn't simply be shut down for a few months for filming, and the only available time slot was after business hours. Even more, they didn't need all those extras that you think you see on screen.
No! Don't go in there! You don't have to die!
They actually used some of the mannequins from the clothing stores already in the mall. This significantly reduced the budget, allowing a 1970s film with a budget smaller than that of Star Wars to look like a high-tech, futuristic facility. Fans who visit the building today can still see some of the remnants of the film, such as staircases and escalators. Number 6. When you think of the holographics in the 1970s, the first thought that comes to mind is either Star Wars or Star Trek. But since CGI was expensive and still in its infancy, the crew came up with a different solution that would pull off something groundbreaking.
Report.
There is no sanctuary.
During the scene where Logan is interrogated by the city's supercomputer, his face is seen spinning around him in a surreal high-tech display. Even though it might seem like CGI, it was one of the first uses of holograms in a feature film. Numerous engineers were brought on board, already experimenting with laser-based imaging. To pull this off, a real holographic projector was used to capture the face of Michael York from various angles. Despite it being one of the most expensive and precise parts of the film, it blew audiences away and was something never before seen on television. It really made the film feel like science fiction, and had many top scientists asking questions about how this was even possible before the time of CGI. Nowadays, this wouldn't even turn the heads of your average viewer. But what about the ice robot? Number 7.
I am ready for you. Fish, plankton, sea greens, and protein from the sea.
One of the most unique parts of Logan's run is certainly the creepy silver robot that was guarding the ice cave. It might feel a little creepy watching it, but it was even more frustrating filming the scenes. Roscoe Lee Brown, the actor who played Box, didn't have it easy, with the suit being made from metallic. He remarked that the suit was stiff, the joints barely moved, and more frustrating was the fact that it broke more than once on set. Since it was held together by a few wires, with an electronic voice sync, it malfunctioned. With each move, wires would become loose, while the voice piece simply didn't work. Even worse was the fact that Brown had to deliver his lines from inside the robot, while making sure that he didn't trip or damage any of the wires. The crew had already lost so much time as production came to a crawl during the scene. Yet, he pulled it off, creating a horrifying character. But behind the scenes, the crew joked that for a killer robot, he was the most high-maintenance actor on set. But perhaps using fire would have helped defeat him. Number 8. One of the most stunning pieces of creativity came from the prop crew. Since they had a very limited budget, coming up with futuristic gadgets for the cast would have been impossible. So, instead of building new gadgets, they raided nearby hardware and kitchen stores to buy basic appliances and kitchen utensils. Many of the tools used by the Sandman technicians and citizens are not exactly what you'd call futuristic. They simply used blenders, electric car openers, and even basic salad tongs. But to make them seem futuristic, the crew sprayed them silver and glued some of them together. Then there were the control consoles that usually operated the futuristic environment, like the doors. For this, they went even further, mounting food trays upside down and repurposing stove knobs that act as activators. The special effects crew dubbed the sounds and lighting to make it seem even more futuristic, and this created the perfect science fiction film in a time where CGI and even basic computers were still a long way off. Number 9. One thing about Logan's run is that this was not a novel idea. It was based on the novel with the same title, written by co-authors William F. Nolan and George Clayton Johnson in 1967. Screenwriter David Zalak Goodman would later write the screenplay for the film. But there were a few things the movie changed from the original novel. One of the major differences from the novel is that it is set in 2126 AD and not 2274 like the movie suggests. Also, the citizens didn't have the luxury of living to the age of 30. with the book suggesting they were euthanized at the age of 21. But according to the director, it would have been impossible to find a believable cast that was under the age of 21. So, they later changed it, even fiddling with the colors and the peak age. For the film, a person was considered to have reached the peak of their life at the age of 23, which was already too old for the original novel. But this change actually allows them to explore deeper into the world of maturity and rebellion. Yet, this change was nothing new, with Hollywood famously adapting books and stories to fit their idea for a film. At least those who didn't read the original novels found it a unique and purpose-driven storyline. So, what was the actual budget of the film? Number 10. Before the release of Logan's Run, the studio remained skeptical. Not only this, but they were also facing financial trouble, and revealing the true cost of the film could have been a major embarrassment, especially if it didn't hit the way it did. Publicly, MGM claimed that the budget was only $6 million. Yet behind the scenes, everyone knew that it ran over $9 million, and became one of the studio's most expensive films at the time. Due to breakdowns of the equipment, extended shoot locations, and the constant experimenting with special effects, there was no way to stick to the original budget given. So, to ensure investors didn't panic, they trimmed it, creating a lie that would turn into one of the studio's biggest gambles. Fortunately, it paid off, and once it was released, the film went on to make a whopping $25 million in North America alone. This was doubled internationally, raking in a solid $50 million. The film not only saved the studio, but also proved that sometimes gambling is not always that bad. Number 11. One of the most unsettling parts of the film was certainly the carousel scene. Those who have come of age enter the carousel, floating into the air before they vanish and burst into light. Yet the original idea was far more violent and would have garnered a lot of scrutiny from the ratings board. According to some insiders, the initial idea wasn't just for the people to vanish, but they would be torn apart mid-air with visible blood, gore, and bodies exploding in front of the crowd. In fact, the filmmakers wanted to show the brutal reality behind the illusion of renewal. They even filmed it in such a way that test audiences were horrified, and many viewers found it too disturbing. In fact, the idea clashed significantly with the film's sleek tone, so in the end, they settled for just a casual floating scene where those who came of age would burst into light. This was still somewhat unsettling, but at least it wasn't as gory. Number 12. Jenny Agutter was an absolute stunner on set, but her costume was so controversial, she absolutely hated it. Made from sheer and delicate fabric, it didn't hold up on set. This meant that it kept falling off each time she moved. But even worse is how revealing it was. Other actors could see right through the thin material, and the costume designer didn't want her adjusting it, or it might tear. Since she didn't wear undergarments, she eventually voiced her frustration, and while the scantily clad costume is still visible early on in the film, subsequent changes were made, with something a little less revealing. But you won't believe how long it took to be released after filming. Number 13. When filming ends, it doesn't necessarily mean that a movie is ready to start. Much like the gruesome carousel scene, a lot of the film is often shown to test audiences, but these audiences need to approve of it if they want to move forward. Alongside the problem that the film was a little over the top for violence, scenes with nudity were also a major problem.
Logan! Hey, give me my screamer back! Hey, they're mine now!
But this was just the start, and up to 10 different scenes were reportedly removed to bring the film back to a PG rating. Yet even then, there was a lot of hope for the ratings board to actually stick to it. The massive 8 months proved a big delay for the film and the production crew. But in the end, the gamble paid off, and the movie was a major success. Number 14. Following the incredible success of the movie, the team decided they could capitalize and perhaps have a series run.
Oh, wait. We have a friend back in the desert.
Oh, you mean Ram? I know. Look, we'll get word to him. How did you know his name?
In 1977, the television series kicked off, with George Harrison starring in the role of Logan 5 and many of the cast members being changed. The series didn't gain any real traction with audiences, only lasting for 14 episodes and running from 1977 to 1978. But it had a few twists. In the spin-off, a new group of elders was introduced, who'd form part of the council. These were revealed to be the men who were actually behind the supercomputer. Yet, even deepening the lore didn't help, and the series simply fizzled out due to a lack of support. Number 15. One of the most important parts of the film was certainly the guns. Not only were they intimidating, but they were also used to hunt down anyone trying to escape their fate. In fact, Michael York, who played Logan 5, was a Sandman himself. But using them on stage proved to be more difficult than anyone ever imagined. York frustratingly recalled that those wretched guns misfired as much as they fired, which led to countless retakes. Since these were not real guns, and just props, they used a chemical reaction of calcium carbide and water to produce acetylene gas, which they ignited. This is what created the sound, which was later enhanced with the use of special effects. But the chemical reaction didn't always work, and this led to countless misfires, which meant that scenes had to be reshot. Number 16. Another scene that was cut can only be found in the novel, and basically explains the whole premise of the film. You might have been wondering why they want people to renew after 30 years. However, the box scene that was cut revealed precisely this reason. In order for the city to sustain itself, it required human flesh to do so. When people turned 30, they basically turned into an energy source that keeps the city running. But this scene was not only too gruesome to air, it also extended the film for too long. It didn't make the final cut, often making the story and the plot feel a little disjointed. Number 17. The carousel might seem like something interesting, and having the people burst into a ray of light was a great way to show what happened. However, getting them to float in the air proved difficult, and using mannequins for the scene didn't really work. So, the crew set into action a new plan. They rigged the cast members with wires, which would be used as a winch that pulled them into the sky as the special effects of the carousel began. The only problem was that safety was still a massive concern and could have led to some of the crew falling. We suppose they probably had a few mattresses below that would have helped to catch the cast if something went wrong. Number 18. One of the biggest questions many fans have is why Logan's Run was made in the first place. Earlier, I revealed that it was based on a novel and that the director wanted to capture how Hollywood actors are often discarded or fizzled out once they reach a certain age. But these weren't the only reasons. Back in the 1970s, the world was slowly realizing more and more about environmental safety, which became a massive problem. The movie portrays an outside world that was damaged and destroyed, which is why everyone had to live inside this massive dome. Yet at some point, they find out that the outside is salvageable, which makes the whole premise of the film and the reason for them living inside this dystopian palace useless. However, it did create a nice story, and it educated many casual viewers about the real dangers of global warming and how it could possibly force everyone to live inside these kinds of structures sometime in the future. This might be what life on Earth is like in the 23rd century. Number 19.
Each cat got 3 different names. See, they got the ordinary name, and then they got their fancy name.
One of the greatest actors to have on board was none other than Peter Ustinov, or the Old Man as many would call him. According to York, it was a sheer delight to work with Ustinov, who didn't just act, but entertained the cast behind the scenes with his incredible stories. But when it was time for him to tell his stories on screen, it was something incredible. According to York, a large part of these stories were improvised, especially when he began talking about the cats. But something was very interesting about the cats. They weren't just brought in for the film, but actually lived on the set. When Ustinov was bored during takes, he eased it for everyone with his drawings. Many of these drawings were made for co-star Agutter. 2 of his most iconic were one called Catastrophe, featuring a squished car, and one that featured a zombie feline. Ustinov titled it Catatonic. Logan's Run wasn't just iconic. It set the stage for some of the greatest sci-fi films to come. This included the likes of Star Trek and the iconic Star Wars franchise. But did you know how hard it was for Lucas to create Star Wars? Check out this video next to find out why.